Good morning, students. Welcome to this discussion on accounting standards. So today we are going to cover the standards which are related to revenue. Okay, so just to give you a brief perspective about the revenue standards. So as around revenue, we are going to cover something which is in relation to the recognition of revenue. Means for an entity, how should the revenue be recognized? Yeah. Now, there are two ways one can really approach revenue recognition as far as its applicability from the perspective of accounting standards is concerned. One is on the construction contracts. Okay. So when it comes to the construction contracts, so the relevant accounting standard which becomes applicable for revenue recognition, that is AS7. Okay, so that is AS7 means AS7 is something which is going to apply on those contracts on which are in relation to construction. But if we talk about any other contract, okay, which is something other than construction contracts, Now, those are the standards on which AS9 will apply. Okay, so that is going to be our next topic after we are done with AS7. So today we plan to cover accounting standard 7. Understood? So I'm just hoping you have got the perspective as to what is it in relation to which accounting standard will apply and what all things are going to cover in this AS7. But once you are through with AS7, it doesn't mean that revenue recognition is completed, because revenue recognition, in a way, there are two topics which will cover this. Yeah. All right. Great. So now moving further on to AS7. All right. So now as a first step, what we will try to do is we'll just try to understand what is this construction contract, because this is going to be the most important part. Why? Because till the time we don't have the understanding of the construction contract, will not be able to understand as to where it is going to apply, or will not be able to approach AS7 appropriately. Yes or no? Yeah. So for this, our first step will be the understanding of construction contracts. Okay, so now what is a construction contract? A construction contract is a contract which is specifically negotiated for the construction of an asset. Means an asset is going to be constructed, or it could be a combination of assets which are closely interrelated. Now this is very, very important, which are closely interrelated or interdependent in terms of their design, technology, function, or their ultimate purpose or use. So that's how you will look at a construction contract. Now let's try to understand this construction contract with the help of some examples. So what could be some of those examples? So if you look at bridge, if you look at building, if you look at dam, pipeline, roads, ships, tunnels. So these are all examples of those contracts wherein the criteria of this construction contract will be met. Okay. Now for this construction contract, there is one more criteria. Let's try to understand that. The other criteria is that these contracts, which are for the purposes of construction, they take substantial period of time to get complete. Okay, now the question is, what do you mean by substantial period of time? So how do you really define this substantial period of time? Substantial period of time will generally be a period of more than 1 year. Okay, as you can look through these examples also. So let's suppose if a bridge is required to be constructed, if a building is required to be constructed, okay, so if a pipeline is required to be constructed, so all of these take substantial period of time. Yeah, so that's why the construction of them in relation to the contract, that will fall under the purview of AS7. Okay. Now, construction of refinery, or if there is any plant and equipment. Now, the moment we say it is going to take substantial period of time, that is when it will fall under AS7, on which accounting standard 7 will apply. Okay. Now, in relation to construction contract, as a next step, what we will do is we'll pick up some examples. Okay. So maybe you can just refer your study material as well. Okay. So let's pick up some examples, and with the help of some examples, we'll now try to do a deep dive into this construction contract. All right. So now, if you look at this example one, entity XY contracts with AB to construct two residential buildings in the same premises. Construction of both the buildings will begin simultaneously. Okay, so there are two buildings which are required to be constructed. Building material, construction work, and other related activities. So they will go on in parallel. Okay, why? Because it will lead to the cost savings for the entity XY. This also helps AB to achieve a timely completion of two buildings and negotiate a consolidated price for the two buildings. Okay, so now in this example, if you look at, there is a single contract. There is a single contract. So even though two buildings are getting constructed, but if you look at it from the perspective of the contractor, now quickly, can you tell me who is the contractor here and who is the customer? Over to you, quickly. Who is the contractor and who is the customer? Yes, waiting for your response. Quickly tell me who is the contractor, who is the customer? Yes, quickly, everyone. Who is the contractor, who is the customer in this example? Great. So, sorry, I missed some of your responses. Malu says XY contractor. Okay. Nitin says XY is contractor. Sanya says AB is contractor. Abhishek says AB is contractor. Okay, great. Neha, I think, is saying XY. So I think some of you think that XY is the contractor, but mostly the responses which I'm getting, AB is the contractor. Okay, no worries. So let's try to look at this up. Okay, so now in this case, entity XY contracts with AB to construct two residential buildings. Okay, in the same premises. Okay, so now who is entering into the contract? So entity XY. Yeah. So who is the customer here? AB. AB is the customer here. Who is the contractor? XY. So now in relation to this construction of building, what will happen? Whose revenue recognition will be looked at? Please tell me. Whose revenue recognition will be looked at? Okay, great. Nagma mentioned it's AB. What about others? Okay, I think Bhumi also mentioned AB. Yes, Pranav is saying AB. Very good. Yes. So now please understand that the moment we say XY is the contractor. XY is the contractor. So now who is going to do the construction? XY, contractor. Yeah. So that's why who will recognize revenue over here? It's going to be XY. It's going to be XY. Okay. Let's look at another example. Example number 2. H, a sole proprietor, contracts with Messrs. DM Construction to dismantle his office premises. And construct it from scratch. Means an office premises is going to be reconstructed. In the given case, if you look at the nature of the contract, it includes both. What two things are included over there? Demolition as well as construction. Okay. So now, let me just quickly share with you some of the perspectives which are important for you to look at whenever construction contract is required to be analyzed, because I can see some sort of confusion over here. Okay, so now, in relation to any contract, the moment we say it's a construction contract, so let's suppose we have established that the contract is in the nature of a construction contract. Okay, so in that case, what will you do? There will always be two parties. So let's suppose there is A Limited, yeah, and B Limited. Now, one of these will be the entity or the contractor. Yes or no? Yeah. Now, who will be the contractor? Who will do the construction work? Now, construction doesn't mean that it will be building always. It could be anything which falls within the purview of this contract. Okay. So let us just assume that A Limited is the contractor. So A Limited is the contractor. Okay. Now, what will you say about B Limited in such a case? B Limited will be the customer. B Limited therefore will be the customer. Customer means for whom A Limited will carry out this work. Means for whom A Limited will carry out this work. Okay, so in this case, A Limited will provide construction services to B Limited. Yes or no? Yeah. So A Limited will provide construction services to B Limited. Yeah. And in return, what will B Limited provide to the contractor? Can you tell me? What will B Limited provide to the contractor? In return, what will B Limited provide to the contractor? Over to you quickly. What do you think? Very good. So, Lowry says consideration. Yes. Vaishnavi says consideration. Anurag says consideration. Great. So now, B Limited will provide consideration. Consideration means money. Yeah, of course, money. Cash. Okay. Now, in this case, because A Limited is providing the services, so that's why when it comes to the revenue recognition, who will recognize revenue out of these two parties? Quickly, tell me. Who will recognize revenue? Great. Aisha says A Limited. Hardik says A Limited. Very good. Asta says A Limited. Yeah, so I think it's very, very clear that A Limited will recognize revenue. So that's why AS7 will apply to which party? Tell me. AS7 will apply to which party? A Limited. A Limited. Why? Because it's A Limited which is recognizing the revenue. It's A Limited. Yeah. So Shweta says A Limited. Yes, of course. Yeah. So therefore, if you look at the applicability of AS7, what do we need to begin with? We need a contractor to begin with. Yeah. And who will be the contractor? Contractor will be the entity which will get into the construction contract. Entity which will get into the construction contract. Understood? Everyone clear on this? Any questions so far? Any questions? Any doubts if you have? Yeah, quite simple, easy. Okay, great. All right, so now continuing on the understanding of the construction contracts in a way. Okay, so in a way, what we are going to cover now is we'll sort of continue with the understanding of the construction contract. Now, in relation to the understanding of the construction contract, now, at times, we may have some contracts which could be executed as 2-3 contracts. Just a second, just a second. In a way, there could be 2-3 contracts. Sometimes, for example, say there are two parties. For example, there could be two parties. So let's suppose once again, we have A Limited and the customer. Okay, so let's suppose customer is the authority. Let's suppose customer is the authority. Okay, now this is a very, very important part of this standard. Now, in this case, let's suppose authority wants to award 3 works. Okay, so there are 3 activities or works which the authority wants to award. So let's try to understand that. Say, for example, a road is required to be constructed. So there will be a stretch of road for 2 kilometers. So this is required to be constructed. And let's suppose after that, there will be a flyover. Okay, let's suppose this will be for 1 kilometer. Okay, so if you look at construction of the road, let me call it as work A or contract A. Means this is the first work. Let's suppose this is work B. And say, for example, after the construction of the flyover, another stretch of road of 1 kilometer is required to be constructed. And let me just call this as work 3. Or we can say work C. Okay, now authority has invited bids. Okay, so authority has invited bids. So what will happen? Various party will submit bids, including A Limited. Why? For this contract or for these contracts. That's how we can put it. Now, when A Limited will submit bids, so at that point of time, so let's try to understand the thought process of A Limited. So what A Limited thought through was that in respect of the work which is required to be completed, they are looking at all of these works as if it's a single contract. Okay, so therefore the budgeting, in respect of all of these works has been done by A Limited in a combined manner. Combined manner means they have gone through their costing, all of those workings, etc., considering as if A Limited, or you can say all of these works will be awarded. In fact, the understanding is that in respect of the contract will be awarded. So even if separate contracts are awarded for all of these 3 contracts, for all of these 3 works, they will be awarded to a single party. Okay. So now, if you look at the budgeting, if you look at the costing from the perspective of A Limited, that's been done in a combined manner. Combined manner means that's not been done separately for work A, separately for work B, or for C. No. So what they have looked at is that A, B, C, it's a single contract in a combined manner for all of them. It's been done. And eventually, what happened? Authority awarded the work to A Limited. Authority awarded all of these works to A Limited. Now, for administrative convenience, what has happened? Authority has awarded, or you can say authority has executed 3 contracts with A Limited. Okay. So therefore, we have contract A now, we have contract B, we have contract C. And let's try to put values to all of these contracts. For contract A, let's suppose value is say 10 crore. For contract B, let's suppose value is say for example 8 crore. Okay, and let's suppose for contract C, value is 15 crore. So all in all, can you tell me what is the overall value for all of these 3 works? All in all, for all of these 3 works, what will be the combined value? Okay, great. So Abhishek says 33 crore. Great. All right. So now, all in all, if you look at these 3 contracts, their total value will be 33 crore. So if you look at the overall value in a combined manner, it is 33 crore. Fine. Now the question arises that tomorrow or later on, when A Limited will execute, let's suppose this first part. Okay, let's suppose A Limited has completed work A only. Okay, because A Limited is not getting into this construction for all of these 3 works simultaneously. So let's suppose it's sequentially, which is done by A Limited. So that's how it's been approached. Now let's suppose tomorrow A Limited completes work A, means A Limited completes contract A. Okay, and takes the money for contract A. Yeah. So can you tell me what is the amount of revenue which A Limited will recognize in such a case? Over to you. What is the amount of revenue which A Limited will recognize? Okay, great. Pranav, great. Yeah, they are saying it should be 10 crore. Yeah. So that's how you'll look at the revenue. Correct. Okay. Now let's suppose even though A Limited has received money for contracting, let's suppose full money is received by A Limited for contracting. And after completing contract A Limited decides not to work on contract B and C, but to work out. Okay. Initially, all the 3 separate contracts were signed. What were those 3 contracts? A, B, and C. But let's suppose after completing contract A Limited doesn't want to work on contract B and contract C, and it wants to work out. Okay. Work for A is fully completed and money for contract A is also fully received. Now, in such a case, the moment we say that contract B and C are pending, we need to find out whether authority will accept this or not. Means tomorrow if A Limited wants to work out, not work on contract B and C, if the authority is okay with that, authority says no problem, I'll get these contracts executed from somewhere else. Then what do you call these contracts as? They are not interlinked to each other. They are not interdependent. Okay. But if in case after completing contract A, if the authority says no, A Limited will also have to complete contract B, contract C, Otherwise, the payment will not be given. Or if the payment is given, that will be called back. Then what do you call it as? They will be interdependent. They will be interlinked to each other. Okay, why? Because even though legally in an administrative manner, three contracts are executed, but if you look at it from the perspective of both the parties, they are considering as if it's a single contract. Okay, so now what is the relevance of this? So if you look at what is the relevance of this, if in case these three contracts happen to be interdependent, then what will happen? A Limited will not be able to recognize revenue for contract A separately, B separately, and C separately. Instead, what will happen? The moment we say these are interdependent, interlinked, A Limited will have to combine all of these three contracts. So even if there are three separate signed legal contracts, they will be required to be combined. They will be required to be combined. Combined means A Limited will consider as if it's a single contract amounting to 33 crore. Okay, for which a part is completed. Therefore, a partial revenue will be recognized. Now, the partial revenue can be 10 crore or something else. That is some part. That is something over which we'll get into our discussion slightly later today. Okay. Now, this is what you call as combining of contract. This is what you call as combining of contract. Means a situation combining of contracts. So this means a situation wherein legally you will have multiple contracts or two or more contracts, but still for the purposes of accounting, you will not consider those as separate contracts. You will consider as if it's a single contract and accordingly recognize revenue on them, considering that to be a single contract. Now the question is, how will you recognize revenue? How do you think the percentage completion will be derived? What will be the basis of that? All of those aspects we are going to cover. Okay, but slightly later. Any questions so far? Quickly, huh? Any questions if you have? Yes, over to you. Yeah. Okay, Hardik is asking, then A Limited will have to pay liquidated damages. See, if in case A Limited wants to walk out, let's suppose, or A Limited decides not to work on contract B and C. So of course, there could be some financial penalties. There could be some other implications which may arise on the part of A Limited. But that is all legal in nature. Okay, that is not something which will have any impact as far as accounting is concerned. Why? Because we are going to look at as to how these contracts are really required to be approached. Means, how do you decide whether even if there are three separate legal contracts, we should not be treating them as separate. Instead, what should we consider? As if they are a single contract. Okay, so that's the situation we are required to analyze over. So all of those financial implications, all of those legal implications, those are not relevant. Okay. Okay. So Hardik is asking, so sir, in combining, we will have to record the value proportionately. Yes. Of course, yes. Because revenue for sure will have to be recognized. And of course, if some part of the work is completed, then of course some part will have to be recognized. But the question is how that proportion will be derived, how that some part will be derived. That is something we are going to cover slightly later. Okay, that is something we are going to cover slightly later. Okay, any question? Any questions? Any doubts? No? Okay, so Sai is asking, the revenue recognition depends on the contract terms. I understand you're talking about the contract terms. Yes, but in respect of the contract terms, what do you need to look at? Two things. One, whether it's a construction contract or not to begin with, and if it's a construction contract, and if you find multiple construction contracts, whether you should be combining those or not. Okay, so these are the two things, or you can say two steps you are required to look at, and accordingly, revenue will be recognized. Okay, so Tabeshwari is asking, work A is given. Okay, so let's suppose if you have a situation, okay, so there's a separate situation wherein work A is given to A Limited, work B is given to B Limited, work C is given to C Limited. Okay, so then what do you do? Then I think all of these complications will not arise. Okay, so let's try to look at that situation as well. So let's suppose if you say that work A, so if let's suppose you say that work A is given to A Limited, work B is given to B Limited, and work C is given to C Limited. Okay. Now in this case, for work A, who will recognize revenue? For work A, who is going to recognize revenue? Tell me quickly. A Limited. Yeah. So that's what Anirudh says. For work B, who will recognize revenue? For work B, who will recognize revenue? Great. So Dilip says B Limited. For work C, who do you think will recognize revenue? For work C, who will recognize revenue? For work C. Yeah. So it's C Limited. So therefore, we can say in such a situation. So if you create this situation wherein there are three contracts and for each contract there's a separate party. So what will happen? The respective party will recognize its revenue. Means A will recognize revenue for contract A after completing contract A. B Limited will recognize revenue for contract B after completing contract B. C Limited will recognize revenue for contract C after completing contract C. Now, in this case, can we say that all these three contracts can become interlinked or interdependent? What do you think? Do you think that will be possible? Do you think interlinkage or interdependence in such a case will be possible? Tell me quickly. Manvi says no. Yeah, no, no, not possible. Correct or not? So that's why in this situation, we can say it's going to be a simple type of contract, or the arrangement is quite simplistic in nature, wherein this interlinkage or interdependence will not be involved. And therefore, this element of combining will go away. Yes or no? So, because if you combine these three, so for different entities, how can you combine and recognize revenue? Not possible. Yeah. So the moment you have this situation, so what will happen? This combining aspect that we discussed will go away. Okay. So that is not possible. Okay. Theoretically as well as practically, that is not possible. So that element will completely go away. Yeah. So that sort of situation will not arise. Okay. Clear, everyone? Any questions? Okay, Nancy says no. Of course, in such a case, interdependence will go away. Yes, great. Any further questions on this? Quickly. No? All right. So now, similar to this combining is the segmenting. Okay, similar to what we just discussed, means in terms of combining, we can also look at one aspect that is about segmenting. So let's try to understand what is that segment. let's suppose if we take out, let's suppose if we take out three contracts for all of these works. Okay. So, okay, so Tanya is asking combining wala point repeat karna. Yes, sure. So combining means if let's suppose there are three contracts, three legal contracts, wherein three works are required to be completed. And if these three contracts are interlinked, interdependent, means after completing work A, after completing contract A, the customer will not accept if the contractor wants to walk out and not complete contract B and C. In such a case, these will be considered to be interdependent, interlinked. So moment we say it's interdependent or interlinked, even though you have separate contracts, you will be required to combine them and recognize revenue on that combined contract. Means you will not recognize revenue for 10 crores separately, 8 crores separately, or 15 crores separately. You will have to consider as if it's a single contract for 33 crore, means for the combined amount, for the total amount, and accordingly you will recognize revenue. Okay. Now clear on this? Okay, so Dilip has a further query on this. So Dilip is asking, what if three works are taken up by three subsidiaries of the same company? It doesn't matter, because if you look at three subsidiaries, they are also separate entities. Yeah, and for each entity, the revenue recognition will be separate. So you can't establish that interlinkage or interdependence. Okay, so there again, the same approach you'll have to consider. Okay, Tambeshwari is asking, B Limited refused the contract, so authority can do the new contract with any other contractor? Yes. So if you have such a situation, then we'll have to say that if the authority is ready to accept that, means in such a case, they will not be interdependent. Only then the authority will accept it. Otherwise, authority will not accept it. Yeah. So Tanya is asking, sir, interdependent के case में combining का concept आता है? Yes. So interdependent, the moment you say they are interdependent, you will have to combine all of these contracts. Okay. Only in that case combining is possible. Or you can say the moment they are interdependent, combining will be required. So combining is again not an option. You will have to do that for sure. Okay, you will have to necessarily do that. So that's how it's required to be looked at. Okay, clear? Any more questions on this? So the moment it's interdependent or interlinked, they will be required to be combined, and accordingly revenue will be recognized. So let's move further. Now let's suppose in this arrangement there was a single contract. Let's suppose there was a single contract for all the three activities. So initially, when the authority and A Limited entered into the contract, okay. So what did they do? So there was a single contract. So one contract was signed between A Limited and the authority amounting to 33 crore. Okay, so let's suppose you didn't have this separate amount. Yeah, so let's suppose these amounts were missing. Three different activities were specified, but the contract was executed for a single amount, 33 crore. Okay. Now, in this case, if there is a single contract wherein three works are required to be completed, three activities are required to be performed. Now, what will happen? To begin with, the moment you see such a contract, what will you do? You will recognize revenue for 33 crore. But if let's suppose only first work is completed, means only work A is completed. So let's suppose we are in financial year 24-25, and let's suppose up to 31st March 2025, only only work A is completed. Means entire work is not completed. Only work A is completed. So this work got completed. Work B and C is not yet started. Now the question is that for this financial year 2024-25, what will you do? Will you wait for the remaining works to be completed and then recognize revenue? Tell me. If let's suppose one of the activity in the contract is completed, which activity is that? A. So will you wait for activity B and C to be completed and then recognize the revenue? Dilip says no, that's not how you can do. Why? Because some part of the contract is executed, some part of the contract is completed, and we are looking at the revenue recognition for this financial year. So what will you do in such a situation? In such a situation, you will have to again find out. You'll have to again find out that whether all these three works, work A, work B, and work C, whether they are interrelated or not, whether they are interdependent or not. If you say that these are interrelated, then what will happen? Then we'll have to look at their proportionate value. Okay, even though it's not mentioned in the contract, we'll have to derive that. Okay, so what are going to be the ways to derive that? That's the separate discussion altogether. So you'll have to derive the percentage of completion and accordingly recognize proportionate revenue. If they are interdependent or interlinked. And we have already discussed how do you derive this interdependent or interlinkage. But if let's suppose, even if there is a single contract, even if there is a single contract, but after completing one of these activities, contractor can move out and the contractor may ignore work B and C. Okay, so of course the contractor will lose out payment for work B and C. So there will be some mechanism which will be agreed between the authority and the contractor as to what is the value which can be assigned to contract A and to B and C, but that will be acceptable to the authority. Okay, so in such a situation, what will you do? In such a situation, even if there's a single contract for a combined amount of 33 crore, for the purposes of revenue recognition, will not be able to go by this single contract for recognizing revenue on proportionate basis. In such a situation, what will be required to be done? This single contract will be required to be segmented. So this will have to be segmented, means this will have to be broken into three parts. And what are those going to be those segments? A, B, and C. And the moment the work for A is completed, let's suppose its value is 9 crore. So revenue will be recognized for 9 crore. Why? Because work proportionate to A, work which is in relation to A is completed. So that's why at the year end, you'll recognize revenue for A. Okay. Let's suppose for B, it's 9 crore. So that will not be recognized. Let's suppose for C, it's 15 crore. So that will not be recognized. So now in segmenting, what have you done? You have picked up a single contract and divided that contract for accounting purposes only. Okay, so legally, we are not saying that we'll now be required to execute three contracts. No. So legally, that single contract will continue. But for accounting purposes, we'll have to change this single contract into various segments. Or you can say into various contracts only for accounting purposes and recognize revenue for work A. Why? Because that work is completed by the financial year end. Or you can say, in relation to that work, revenue recognition criteria is met. Okay. At the same time, B and C are not interlinked to each other. They are all independent of each other. Okay. So this is what you call as segmenting of a contract. Okay. Exactly of similar nature. So now at times you may have a single contract which is required to be segmented, or you may have various contracts which are required to be combined. And I'm hoping that you are clear on this as to how this is required to be done. Any questions, any doubts if you have on this? Yes, quickly, over to you. Any questions? Okay, so clear on the segmenting. Okay, so Kasak is asking, we can record percentage of completion. See, we can record percentage of completion. That's what we call as proportionate recognition. Okay. In case it's a single contract and wherein you are not clear as to what is the percentage is completed. So that's how you'll approach. Okay, so Hardik is asking, so sir, in segmenting, all the three separate values will be given? Yes. See, for you, you will not be required to derive the values. So separate values will be given to you in case that is required to be segmented. Of course, you will be given a combined value, and if you require to segment that, so separate values will also be given. Okay, so Tanya is asking, what is the criteria for segmentation? Criteria is again same. First of all, you will have to find out a contract which will have various activities, which will have various works, which will have various performance obligations. And you'll have to find out whether all of these activities are interlinked, interdependent or not. If they are not interlinked, if they are independent, that's when you will segment the contract. Segment the contract into various activities. All those activities which are not interlinked. So that's the criteria. Okay. So that's how you'll be required to approach that. Okay. Great. So then I have this question from Laurie. Okay, so she's asking, if work A is completed by the end of financial year, then value of work A should be recognized as revenue, mentioning it as interrelated contract and segmented. No, you will have to recognize revenue for A, but you will not call it as interrelated contract and segmented. No, you will have to just simply say that you have segmented the contract, and after segmenting, this is the activity, this is the work for which revenue recognition criteria is met. Okay. The moment you say it's interrelated contract, then you will not be able to segment that. Yes or no? Yeah. Because you'll have to say this is a contract wherein works are independent of each other. Okay. So it's other way around. Clear on this? Quickly. Yeah. So please remember, the moment you say interdependent, that segmenting element will go away. In such a case, you will have to keep it combined. Yes or no? Great. So Laura is clear on this. Nitin is asking, combining of contract को accounting purpose से divide कर देंगे तो segmenting of contract हो जाएगा. Let me put it this way. If there is a combined contract and for accounting purposes, you recognize revenue separately for various activities. That's what you call as segmenting. That's what you call as segmenting. Okay. Yeah. So Ankit wants this to be quickly repeated. Sure. So now what is segmenting? So we had a single contract. We had a single contract for 3 activities amounting to 33 crore. So there was a single contract amounting to 33 crore. Now against this 33 crore, 3 activities were required to be completed. Activity A, B and C. And in this, what did we check? Whether A, B, and C are interdependent or independent. In case we find that they are independent, means execution of activity has no linkage with B or C. Okay. And if the work for A is completed, that will have no implication as far as B or C is concerned from the perspective of the customer. That's where you call it as independent. So that's where, what will you do? You will not recognize revenue on 33 crore completely, or say proportion of 33 crore you will not be able to derive. What will you do? You will consider as if this activity A is a single contract. Okay. What is the value for that? Let's assume that's 9 crore. For this 9 crore, you will recognize revenue. Okay. For the remaining amount, you will look at as and when they are completed. Okay. So you are not treating this to be a single contract. Yeah. So your approach as far as that aspect is concerned is changed. Clear on this? Get clear? Yeah. Ankit, please confirm quickly. Clear on this? Then I'll move on to some more queries which I have received. Great. Okay. So Tanya is asking, sir, if A and B works are interdependent and C is independent. Okay. Great. Very good. So let's suppose in this case, we have a slightly different situation. So let me just deal with that situation also. Let me just change this part. Okay, so let's suppose we have a single contract for 33 crore, wherein A and B are found to be interdependent. Okay, so these and two are interdependent. Means they are linked to each other. And C is independent. Okay, so A and B, you have two separate activities, but they are interdependent. Means they are linked to each other. But C is not linked to A and B. So in this case, what will you do? You will consider that there are two activities in a way. Okay, so you'll have to consider AB as a single contract. Yeah, so clearly this entire contract is required to be segmented. So this segmentation will again be required. But when you get onto this segmentation, what will you do? You will say AB are interlinked. So that's why you will not be able to segment A and B. So this will be, let us suppose this is 18 crore. And C, that is 15 crore. Okay. So this is how you will segment it. Now the question is, AB are interdependent, C is independent. So this is how segmenting has been completed. So effectively, what did you do? You have broken this single contract into two contracts. One for AB, one for C. So that's how you have broken the single contract into two contracts. Now, once that is broken, the next stage will be revenue recognition. Now, let me just add further through this. Okay, so over to your query, let me just add some more points. Yeah. So let's suppose if you go on further asking, let's suppose now in this situation, only work A is completed. Possible or not? Let's suppose only work A is completed. Work B or activity B is not yet started. A is fully completed and B is going to start. So now how will you recognize revenue? So tell me, anyone, any thoughts from your side on this? So quickly, I think we have already discussed this, but still, let me just understand. Okay, great. So Hardik is saying percentage of the work completion. So now, what do you have? Very good. So now you have a contract for 18 crore. Okay, Ashdeep says you have a contract for 18 crore on which, now you have a contract for 18 crore on which one part is completed. Now we don't know whether that one part is 50% or 60% or 30% or you will have to derive that. Okay. So the percentage of 18 crore that is completed, that is what you will recognize revenue. So you'll not say that it's A which is completed out of 18. So that's why I recognize 10 crore. No, no, you will not do that. Why? Because for your purposes, A and B is a single contract. A and B is a single contract amounting to 18 crore on which the percentage of the work which is completed that is required to be recognized. Okay, clear on this, Tanya? Quickly, any questions on this? Clear on this? Yes, quickly, please confirm. Clear on this? Yeah, great. Any further questions? No? All right. So let's try to look at one illustration also. So we can just look through one of the illustration which is given in the study. So let me just move to that part. All right. So let's look at this illustration number 1. Okay. So this is page 8.5. So if you want to refer in the study material, you can do that. Okay. And you're required to answer this. XYZ Construction Limited, a construction company, undertakes the construction of an industrial complex. It has separate proposals raised for each unit to be constructed in the industrial complex. So now there's an industrial complex wherein various units will be involved as far as its construction is concerned. Since each unit is subject to separate negotiation, he is able to identify the costs and the revenues attributable to each unit. Should XYZ treat construction of each unit as a separate construction contract, or should all of those units be combined and recognize revenue for this combined contract or a single contract? Over to you. What do you think? Quickly, over to you. Please don't look at the solution. Ankit, I'll come to your query as to how do you calculate percentage slightly later, because that is going to be our separate part. Great. Tanu is asking combined contract. What about others? Hardik is saying it's a single contract but are independent in nature. Okay, so that means you try to say it's a single contract. Great. Sakshi is saying it's a single contract. What about others? Okay, so Rojalyn is saying it's a single contract. Tanu is saying it's a single contract. Veshwari is saying it's independent contract. Interdependent means single only. Yeah. So Abhishek, Nitin, they are saying it's single. Pooja is saying interdependent single. Nan is saying single. So I think now everyone is saying it to be a single contract. So can you tell me why do you think it's a single contract? The reason, the rationale. Why do you think it's a single contract? Tell me. So what makes you say it's single? What makes you say it's interdependent? Why? So Asta is saying since separate proposal raised, it's not a single contract. Okay, no worries. Let me just also understand the thought process of so many students who are saying it's a single contract. So why do you think it's single? Okay, so Kushi is saying separate contracts because negotiation is done separately. Pranav is saying because these units are all part of same industrial complex. So what makes you say that they are interdependent? So how do you find that interdependence? Okay, Hardik is saying it was given to him at a single price, but the units are separate units. So it's independent in nature. But again, I don't think that if you'll have different units, so they will automatically become independent. Yes or no? which is saying it's a separate proposal. Okay, so Nair is saying only one industrial complex is there. Okay, so let me just try to get onto this part. Let us just try to look at this. So let's suppose there's a complex which is required to be constructed. So in this context, what will happen? Let's suppose 3 units will be constructed. So this is unit A. Let's suppose this is unit B. This is unit C. Okay. In fact, that is the contract. Yes or no? That is the contract. Okay. So now, when you look at all of these 3 units, A, B, and C, what will happen? This industrial complex will be ready. So this industrial complex in a way will comprise of 3 units, or you can say there will be 3 towers or 3 buildings. So in this complex, let's suppose there will be 3 buildings. Let me just put it this way. Now, if you look at the contractor, so it says contractor has raised separate proposal for each unit. So for this separate proposal has been given, for this separate proposal has been given, for this separate proposal has been given. Okay. And contractor understands the cost for this unit, this unit, this unit. Separate costs are made available to him. Of course, when the proposal will be given, so costing for all of these units will always be available. Yes or no? And eventually, it appears as if separate contracts will be executed for 3. Why? Because revenue for all of these 3 will be known. So for this, revenue will be known. For this, again, revenue will be known. For this, again, revenue will be known to the contractor. So what does it mean? It means after submitting separate proposals on the basis of cost of each unit, it appears 3 contracts will be executed. Okay, but whether 3 contracts are executed or single contract is executed, wherein amount for all of these units are mentioned, does it really matter to us? No, because we are required to check whether we should be combining all of these 3 units, means whether they are interdependent or not. Now, nowhere in the question it is written that they are interdependent. Yes or no? At the same time, nowhere it is not written that they are not interdependent. Correct? So as of now, that information of whether these 3 units are independent or interdependent is not known to us. Is not known to us. So if something is not clarified, how can you assume that it's going to be interlinked? Because most of you are saying because it's one complex, so that's why no. So even if there's one complex, its construction is separate. For each unit, its construction is going to be separate. Yeah, for this will be separate, for this it will be separate. How can you say they will always be interdependent, they will always be interlinked? No, you can't say that. Such type of assumptions you should not draw. If you draw that, that will be inappropriate. Okay. Now, if you look at the fact pattern which is available to us in the question, and I'm just going by the fact pattern which is available in the question, separate costing for each unit is worked out. Correct. Separate revenue for each unit is identified. In fact, initially when the budgeting was done, that was also done separately for each unit. That's why separate proposals have been given. So in such a case, what should you do? You should be treating them as separate contracts and not a single contract. Why? Because if you do that, that will be incorrect. Yes or no? Because unnecessarily, or you can say on your own, you're just trying to bring in those assumptions which are not appropriate, for which there is no fact pattern which is available. So till the time you don't have the fact pattern, how can just you go on and assume Okay, so all of these assumptions have to be backed with something. You can't just make those assumptions on your own. If you do those assumptions, that will be inappropriate. Okay, so let's go by the information which is given in the question. So what does that information say? Information says separate costing, separate budgeting has been worked out, separate revenue is identified. So let's call them as separate contracts and not single contracts. So that's why in this case, what will you do on the basis of the fact pattern? You will consider all of these as separate contracts. Okay, you will have to consider all of these as separate contracts, and therefore recognition of revenue for each unit will again be separate. Clear on this? Yeah, therefore revenue recognition for all of these units will be separate. Okay, any questions, any doubts so far? Okay, Tanu is clear, Pranav is clear on this. What about others? Any questions? Neeru is clear. Hardik, Abhishek, great. Yeah, all right. So great. So I'm just hoping that what is a construction contract? Uh, the aspect around its combining or segment is now clear to you. Okay. So now, as a next step, let's move further and let's try to understand as to which all types of contracts we may have. Okay, so the standard says two types of contracts could be there. So now we are talking about the construction contract. So two types of contracts are possible. One, which you call as fixed price contract. Fixed price contract. And the other type is cost plus contract. So these are the two types which are possible. Now, what is the difference between these? Fixed price contract means wherein your price is fixed or your rate per unit of output is fixed. For example, you enter into a contract, amount let's suppose is 20 crore fixed. Okay, so come what may, any sort of changes till time those are not negotiated and discussed, your amount is sort of fixed at 20 crore. Okay, so this is fixed at 20 crore. As against this, there could be another type of contract, or you can say another contract in which nature could be slightly different. Now, what is going to be the understanding in a cost plus contract? It says whatever cost the contractor will incur, whatever cost the contractor will incur, on that cost, contractor will build a markup. Contractor will build a markup. Okay, so cost plus contract. So now, how does this markup work? Say, for example, contractor believes that the cost incurred will be 10 crore. Okay, let's suppose the cost will be 10 crore. On this cost, what will happen? On this cost, let's suppose the contractor has agreed a margin of 10%. So in this case, what will happen? Cost plus the markup is going to be the revenue. So can you tell me the amount? Can you tell me the amount in this case? What is going to be the amount? 11 crore. Great. Aisha says 11 crore. Yeah. So I think everyone has computed this. Great. Now, what has been the basis of this revenue? This revenue is completely dependent on the cost incurred. So if the cost incurred will go up, the revenue will go up. If the cost incurred will go down, the revenue will go down. So that's why you call this as cost plus contract. Means cost which is incurred on which a margin. Now, where does this margin comes from? This is agreed with the customer. Okay, so these are the two types of contracts you can see as far as construction contracts are concerned. Okay, so both of them are possible. Practically both of them work. Depending on the type of contract you'll have to determine as to what is going to be the amount which is involved, and accordingly your revenue recognition will be, you can say, revenue will have to be measured. Why? Because your amount will accordingly change. Clear? Simple on this? Yeah. Any questions, any doubts? Quite simple, easy to understand. Okay, so I can see one question coming up. Let me just get on to that question. Okay, so great. Sai is asking, sir, what about build, operate, transfer contracts like metro rail projects, road construction? Subsequently, they are given for right to collect road tolls for vehicle movements. So, what's the question? So what's the query? So, what do you want to understand about it? Nori is asking, can you give an example of cost plus contract in building? Very simple. Huh? So, let's suppose there's a contractor. So, contractor says that for this construction, whatever is my cost, I'll charge a markup of 20%. And let's suppose contractor believes the estimated cost will be 10 crore or say 1 crore. Okay, let's suppose estimated cost is 1 crore. So now what is going to be the revenue? 1 crore plus 20%. So 1.2 crore. As simple as that. Yeah. Okay. Kasak is asking about escalation. See, we are not yet done. So there are a lot of points which are going to come. We'll discuss all of these: escalation, variation, all of these things we'll discuss. Huh? Sai is asking, can you please explain those types of contracts: build, operate, transfer type? Yeah, of course, we can discuss that, but I would request that because we'll have to digress from this topic. So maybe towards the end of the session, we can pick up that. Okay. Because that has got nothing to do with this, what we are discussing right now. Okay. So maybe towards the end of the session, we can pick that. Fine. Okay. Tambeshwari is asking, which type do we use in metro? So if you talk about construction of a train, yeah, of course, this is going to be sort of something which will take substantial bit of time. So of course, this should be something which you call as construction contract, which will fall within the purview of AS7. Yes or no? So every time you need to evaluate the contract, you need to find out what are the terms which are involved in the contract, what is the nature of the contract, and accordingly you'll have to find out whether you go to AS7 or not. And accordingly, therefore, you will recognize it. Yeah, and there are a lot of points in AS7 which are yet to be covered. We have just started, sort of. Okay. So a lot of things are going to come up on the basis of which we can have a discussion. Fine. Okay. Any further questions? Any doubts? Otherwise, what we can do is we can take a break. Yes, quickly. Any questions? Any doubts? Otherwise, we can take a break. Huh? No? No questions? Okay. So Tambeshwari is asking, in metro, which type of contract you think will be applicable? See, that will be again dependent on the contract between the contractor and the customer. So it's not you are required to derive. It's something which will be existing in the contract. So if they enter into fixed contract, if they enter into cost plus, so we'll not know. They may enter into any type of contract. Huh? But once you go through that contract, that is when you need to find out whether this is fixed or cost plus. So that's how it works. Okay, clear on this? Yeah. All right. So I think we can take a break now. Yeah. So let's meet after the break. Huh? So Manish, let's take a break. Huh? Manish, you are there? Manish, we can take a break. Manish, Umesh. Yeah. So let's meet after 15 minutes. Huh? Okay. Manish, can we start? All right. Okay. Great. Hi. Welcome back. So let's continue with our discussion. Okay. So now moving further in relation to the construction contract, we'll now move on to the next aspect, which is about the components of revenue. Means when we talk about revenue recognition, what all components will be there? Means when we say that in the contract there will be value of say 10 crore or 5 crore or 6 crore, what will that value comprise of? That is what you call as contract revenue. Okay. Now, irrespective of the nature of the contract that we have, this contract revenue in terms of its components is required to be understood. Okay. So the first component is about the initial amount. Initial amount means the first amount to begin with, which is specified in the contract. That is called as initial amount agreed in the contract. Okay. So say for example, initial amount agreed in the contract is say 5 crore to begin with. So initially when the two parties entered into the contract, means contractor and the customer. So what was the amount involved? 5 crore. That is what you call as initial amount of revenue agreed in the contract. Okay. Now, tell me one thing, that if the revenue is required to be recognized, okay, forget about that combining, segmenting for some time. Okay, forget about whether it will meet the construction criteria or not to fall under AS7. Okay, so I want a general aspect to be discussed with you. So let's suppose if two parties enter into a contract. Okay, so one is the contractor and second is the customer, and they agree for an amount, say 5 crore. So do you think that will be a challenge for revenue recognition? Over to you quickly. Do you think that will be a challenge for revenue recognition? Over to you. Abhishek says no. Very good. Pranav says no. Yes or no? Yeah. See, if two parties have entered into a contract and they have decided the amount, they have agreed the amount. So on which there is no dispute, there's no question mark. Why? Because what is the understanding? Contractor will complete the work, get 5 crore revenue. So as far as recognition of revenue on this 5 crore is concerned, or you can say on this initial amount is concerned, there will not be any challenge. Okay, there will not be any challenge. So this will not be a problem for you. Now, sometimes what may happen is, as the work will progress, as the work will progress, what may happen is, so let's suppose if some renovation work is going on, let's suppose, okay, I'm sure some of you will be able to relate to this. So let's suppose if you are getting your house renovated, or let's suppose if you are getting your house constructed. So what may happen is, maybe you call a contractor and let's suppose you agree that, okay, we'll pay you 5 crore for the construction of the building. Let's suppose during the course of construction, you find, no, this is something which we initially discussed, but we want to get it changed. Okay, maybe the layout is required to be changed, or maybe there is something else which you require to change. Yeah, so sometimes you may want to do that. Yes or no? You may want to do that. You may want to get some of the things changed as far as the work or the activities in the contract is concerned. Correct? Now, those changes, those variations, because those were not initially agreed, and because these are the changes for which the effort of the contractor could be different, may require the changes in this amount or not. So that may require change in this amount or not. Tell me, what do you think? Yeah. So let's suppose if you call a contractor and if you'll say, no, we agreed for something else, but I want you to change it this way. So he may say, okay, fine, I'll do that, but I'll charge 10 lakhs more, or I'll charge 1 lakh more, or I'll charge 50 lakhs more. Yes or no? Yeah. Now, this is what you call as variations. This is what you call as variations. Okay. Similarly, there could also be one aspect in the contract. So initially, or to begin with, when you enter into the contract, what may happen is both the parties may agree, means the contractor and the customer may agree. Okay. So maybe you want to incentivize the incentivize the contractor. So you are the customer and you want that, this building needs to be constructed in 2 years. So you don't want any sort of delay. Yeah. But generally, what do you find? Generally, there are delays. Okay. Because it's a typical contract, complex contract. It's not so easy to complete on time. So that's why what do you want to do? You want to give the incentive. So what did you say? So you said, okay, please understand, if you will complete the work in 2 years, then over and above 5 crore, I'll also pay you 50 lakhs. Okay. So if you don't delay, then I'll pay you 50 lakhs more. But if you delay, then this 50 lakhs will not be payable. So this is what you call as incentive. Similarly, there could be a penalty. Yeah. So you may say that if you delay, there will be a penalty of say 50 lakhs. Sometimes you can also give an incentive saying that, let's suppose the work is required to be completed in 2 years. But if you completed 1 month before, so for every month in advance that you construct, you will get 10 lakhs more. Okay. So there are different ways through which you can sort of bring in some sort of changes, or which may require some sort of negotiation, or which may require some sort of agreement, which is not initially agreed, which is required to be done slightly later on. Which is required to be done slightly later on. Okay. Now that could be in the form of variation, incentive, or all of these things. Now, in relation to this variation, another thing which is very commonly seen happens to be cost escalation. Now let's try to understand about cost escalation. So what is a cost escalation? So let's suppose you enter into the contract. Okay. Say 2019 is when you enter into the contract for the construction of building. Okay. I'm just taking construction of building because that is what with which you can just easily relate. Okay. Say it was in 2019. Fine. So what was the plan? That the construction of the building will be completed in 2 years. So means by 2021, it will be completed. Okay. But in between, it came 2020. So there was Corona. So let's suppose work got delayed. Okay. So work could not get completed in 2 years. Okay. Now, this work was required to be completed in 2 years. Yes or no? But did the work get completed in 2 years? Tell me, did the work get completed in 2 years? Over to you. Did the work get completed in 2 years? No. Okay, now tell me, if the work got delayed by 2 years by the agreed time, who was at default? Was it the customer or the contractor? Who was at default in this case? Who was at default? In this case, who do you think was at default? Hardik says no one. Hardik says no one. What about others? Anurag says no one. Manvi says no one. Yes or no? Now, this delay is caused because of a factor which is beyond the control of the contractor as well as the customer. Okay. So both of them are not at any sort of fault. Okay. So it's beyond their control. but delay has happened. Yes or no? So let's suppose initially they agreed the revenue will be 5 crore. So this was the initial revenue agreed. So tell me one thing, what will be the basis of agreement of revenue? It will be based on the costing of the contractor. Yes or no? So maybe initially contractor estimated that the cost will be 4 crore, and that's why contractor was happy to get 5 crore. Correct? Yeah. Yes or no? So this is how generally the revenue will be agreed. This is how the contractor will generally be looking at it. Yes or no? Yeah. So Nitin says yes. Now, now what has happened? 2 years have passed. 2 years have passed. And let's suppose work is not yet completed. And the contractor believes it will take another 2 years. Let's suppose contractor believes that no, the work is percentage completion is negligible, it will take another 2 years. And within these next 2 years, will the cost go up due to inflation and various other factors? During this period, will the cost for the contractor go up or not? Tell me, everyone, during this period, will the cost go up? Yes or no? So Aisha says yes, Abhishek says yes. Now, if you look at the contractor is now estimating that his cost will shoot up to 8 crore. For the construction to be completed, cost will shoot up. Yeah, because during this period, let's suppose costs have increased significantly, or it may be 4.5 crore. So we are not saying it will be significantly high. Let's suppose it's 4.5 crore. Okay. Now, this cost escalation, this cost increase is what the contractor will want to be compensated for, because the contractor will say that for this cost escalation I should be compensated. But is this cost escalation agreed at the beginning of the contract? No. Let's suppose it's only a clause which is there in the contract. It says that if there will be a cost escalation, contractor will be paid. Okay, now tell me one thing. When the two parties enter into the contract, what was the amount which was fixed, which was agreed, over which there is no dispute? What is the amount over which there is no dispute? Lowry says 5 crore. What about others? Manvi says 5 crore. So only the amount which is 5 crore is what? Which is fixed, over which there is no dispute. Yeah. But other than that, if you look at any sort of variation, whether you call it as incentive, cost escalation, penalty, all of these things, principally they are agreed, but in terms of amount, are they agreed at the beginning of the contract? So even if we say principally, conceptually, they exist in the contract, but as far as their amount is concerned, are they agreed at the beginning of the contract? Are they agreed upfront? As far as the amount is concerned, tell me, what do you think? Hardik says no. So as far as their amount is concerned, that amount is not known at the beginning of the contract. Only when it will be known to both the parties, that is when they will enter into a discussion. Yeah. So let's suppose tomorrow if the contractor comes and says that my cost is now 4.5 crore. Okay. So that's why I want to increase this revenue to 6 crore or say 5.5 crore. So do you think the customer will agree immediately? What do you think? Do you think the customer will agree immediately on this? What are your thoughts? Yeah, tell me. So if you happen to be the customer, will you agree on this immediately? Mahalakshmi says no. Yeah. So no, of course, some sort of negotiation, some sort of discussions will generally start. And till the time that is not agreed, till the time that is not settled, what will you do? You will not be able to recognize revenue. Correct? So therefore, whenever it comes to the revenue, this initial amount which is fixed, for which there's no dispute, what can you do? You can just go ahead and recognize revenue, whether you follow completed contract or percentage completion. Okay, so that's a separate aspect that we'll cover later. Means whether you recognize that fully or on a proportionate basis, as far as this amount is concerned, there is absolutely no problem. But other than this initial amount, whether that is any variation, any cost escalation or incentive, etc., that will be or that shall be recognized only and only when both the parties have agreed for that. Okay, or you can say when the customer has approved that. So it should not happen that the contractor has thought of an amount, say it's 6 or 5.5, and start recognizing revenue. So is that okay? The answer is no. Why? Because the acceptability of the customer is not there. Approval of the customer is not there on that particular amount. So till the time that is not there, the revenue in respect of that portion, that additional portion, should not be recognized, or that decreased portion. Why? Because if let's suppose there's a penalty, that should not be recognized. Clear on this? Everyone clear on this? Any questions on this? Any questions? Clear? All right. So what we'll do is we'll look at one example through which we should get some more clarity. Okay. So again, I'll go to your study material. There you can just go to this page number 8.8. Okay. Yeah. So you can go to this page number 8.8. Yeah. Okay. So let's look at this illustration now. Illustration 2. Yeah. So you need to compute this and let me know as to what is going to be the amount. So you can just start solving this. Illustration 2.2. AB contractors enter into a contract on 1st of January 2000X1 with XY to construct a 5-storied building. Under the contract, AB is required to complete the construction in 3 years. Okay. So the construction will be completed by 31st December 2000X3. So it's a calendar year. Following information is relevant. Means this sort of information is also required to be looked at. Fixed price, which is agreed, 5 crore. Material cost escalation. So there's an escalation cost. It says to the extent of 20% of increase in material cost will be compensated. Okay, so escalation clause is there for the cost of material. Similarly, escalation clause is also there for labor cost. So what is the escalation percentage permissible? Up to 30%. Okay. Then it says, in case AB is able to complete the construction in less than 2 years and 10 months. So initial period agreed was 3 years. But it says, if AB completes the construction in 2 years and 10 months or less than that, AB will be entitled for additional incentive of 50 lakhs. Means over and above 5 crore, AB will also get 50 lakhs. Okay, further it says, in case the construction is delayed beyond 3 years and 2 months, okay, XY will charge a penalty from AB of 20 lakhs. Means for 2 months delay, it appears there is no penalty. But if it goes beyond 2 months, then the penalty will be there for 20 lakhs. At the start of the contract, AB has a reason to believe that the construction will be completed in 2 years and 8 months. At the start of the contract, AB has a reason to believe. So AB believes that the construction will be completed in 2 years, 8 months. Means AB will be able to get the incentive. Assume that the construction was actually completed in 2 years and 9 months. Okay, so that's the assumption you are required to take. Labor cost was originally estimated to be 1.2 crore. Originally means when initially the assessment was done. However, costs have increased by 25% during the construction period. Okay. Material costs have increased by 40% due to short supply. Total increase in material cost due to the 40% escalation is 80 lakhs. Okay. Now, you are required to suggest what should be the amount of contract that you can recognize as revenue. Okay. So we are not talking about what is the amount of revenue you will recognize. Okay. So as far as the contract revenue is concerned, if you look at this contract, means what is the amount which will be eligible for recognition? Whether you recognize that on completed basis or percentage basis, that is not something which is asked over here. In a way, you are required to compute the amount of contract revenue. Okay. Assume that in year 2000 X2, calendar year X2, XY, XY, can you tell me who is XY? Contractor or the customer? Tell me quickly. XY. XY is contractor or customer? Very good. Supriya says customer. Saitya says customer. Great. Customer has requested contractor to increase the scope of the contract. Okay. An additional floor is required to be constructed and there is an increase in contract fee by 1 crore for this additional scope. AB has incurred a cost of 20 lakhs for getting the local authority approvals, which it will be entitled to claim for XY in addition to the increase in the fixed fee. Okay. Also measure the total contract revenue in this case. Okay. Yeah. So this is what you are required to compute. Over to you. Yes. Over to you. Quickly. If you have just solved this, you can start sharing your responses. I'll just wait slightly and then I'll get on to the solution. Okay. So I'll wait for you to solve. So I'll wait for you to solve and answer this. Yes, I'll just take a couple of minutes, and then I'll get on to the solution. All right, so you can just start sharing your responses. If you have solved, I would suggest everyone please try to solve this. Okay, great. I can see the response from Nancy now. Okay, quickly, everyone. I'm just hoping everyone is on to this. Okay, so you can just give me the final answer once you're done. So what is the amount of contract revenue which you will consider here? Yeah, quickly. What is the amount of contract revenue that you need to consider? Great. So I can see the response has started coming. Very good. Abhishek has solved this. So Abhishek says it should be 7.4 crore. And I'm just assuming that nobody is looking at the solution given in the study. Okay. Otherwise, this entire purpose of discussion will go away. Okay. So please try to attempt it on your own. Great. Rajesh has also solved this. Rajesh is getting 7.4 crore. Great. What about others? Bhumika is getting the same answer. Great. What about others? Quickly. Hardik is getting 8 crore. Very good. So a different answer. So I've received two different answers. What about others? Please don't look at the solution. Because if you look at the solution and give me the answer, or you solve it by looking at the solution, then I think there's no point attempting this, huh? So you should attempt this on your own. Great. Pratimalini is saying 7.5 crores, 7.4 crore. All right. What about others? Great. Prakriti has also solved this 6.95. It doesn't matter whether your answer is incorrect or not. Okay. It doesn't matter. You should attempt this. Why? Because when you will attempt this, even if it is not correct, it doesn't matter. You will be able to understand as where did you go wrong, which is okay. Vaishnavi is getting 7.4, Anirudh is getting 8.24, Asta is getting 7.4. Very good. What about others? Quickly, quickly. Okay, so I can see this response from Balamurgan. Okay, Balamurgan is also getting 7.4. Saitya is getting 7.4. Quickly, what about others? Tell me, everyone done on this? Yeah, okay. Tambeshwari is getting 7.1. All right, so let's get on to the solution. I think this was fairly simple. So to begin with, maybe you can just look at the question now. To begin with, what was the initial amount agreed? 5 crore? Yeah, 5 crore. Okay. And then it says incentive is what you should assume. So you should assume incentive will be received. So 50 lakhs we can add for the incentive, correct? Okay. Now, if you look at the material cost, that has increased by 80 lakhs, wherein the escalation percentage is 40 lakhs, sorry, 40%. But what is the maximum percentage which is acceptable? What is the maximum percentage which is acceptable? Tell me, for the material cost, what is the maximum percentage which is acceptable? 20%. So that's why even if the cost has gone up by 80 lakhs, what is the maximum amount you can consider? 40 lakhs. Okay, so 40 lakhs will add. Okay, now as far as the labor cost is concerned, this has increased by, labor cost has increased by, so if you look at the labor cost, this was 1.2 crore. Labor cost has gone up by 25%. Okay. Now, what was the maximum percentage agreed? 30%. Means up to 30% was acceptable. So is this increase within the range? Is this increase within the range? Yes. So that's why this 25% increase you will take up. So you'll get 30 lakhs. 30 lakhs. Okay. Now, if you consider all of these elements, you were required to compute the amount. Please remember, so in the question, there are two parts. After considering these three components, incentive, number one, material cost, number two, labor cost. After considering these three components, you are required to compute the contract revenue. So what is the amount you will get? 6.2 crore. So actually, in this question, there are two questions. There are two sub questions. Okay. So 6.2 crore is what you get. After that, you are required to answer another question. So it says there is also a variation. What is the variation? Scope of the contractor was increased. So if the scope was increased, for that scope, additional 1 crore was agreed. So that 1 crore you'll add, that 1 crore you'll add. Okay. Then it says contractor incurred a cost of 20 lakhs for some approval or some miscellaneous cost could be there, which he'll be able to claim from the customer. Okay, so there's absolutely no problem as far as that claim is concerned. So you'll add that 20 lakhs. You will add that 20 lakhs. Yeah. So what do you get? 7.4 crore. Okay. So all in all, what is the amount of revenue? 7.4 crore. Yeah. So some of you who were not getting 7.4 crore, please don't worry. Huh? You attempted this. But now you will be able to understand better as to what is it that you missed out on. Yes or no? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Nan is asking how the material cost recovery is calculated. Okay, Nan. So Nan, if you look at the question, it says material cost has gone up by 40%. Yeah. I think same is the question from Neha. Okay. So let me just get on to that calculation. So if you look at the material cost, question says that has gone up by 40%. There's a 40% increase. Due to this 40% increase, what is the amount you get? 80 lakhs. So 80 lakhs is the increase. Okay. Now please remember that this increase is actual. Yes or no? So this is the actual increase. Now against this actual increase, what is the permissible percentage? Neha, Nayan, please confirm. What is the permissible percentage? What is the permissible percentage? Nayan says 20%. Okay. So against this 40%, only 20% will be allowed. Okay. So therefore, against this 80 lakhs, what is the amount that you will be allowed? What is the amount that will be allowed? Yeah. So 20%. Yeah. 40 lakhs. Supriya says 40 lakhs. Very good. So 40 lakhs will be allowed. So that's why what will happen? Even though the contractor will incur this cost, he will not be able to charge this from the customer. Why? Because the customer will only pay 40 lakhs. So this is the amount which the customer will provide. Clear on this? Clear on this? Yeah? Everyone clear? Nan? Nia, clear? Clear on this? Any more questions? Okay, great. So I think Hardik is saying, as to, where did he go wrong? Which is absolutely okay. See, it doesn't matter. Huh? It doesn't matter. Important thing is that even if you are going wrong, and if you are able to find out as to, where you are going wrong, please remember that will be more helpful for you, because that sort of mistake you will not repeat. Hardik is saying, can we say that lower of actual and permissible? Yes, of course. And that's based on a logic. Always. Always. Huh? Laura is saying, if any cost is below the limit, then of course you will go by the actual cost. Okay, you will not touch the limit. Why? Because if, let's suppose, so you put yourself in the shoes of the customer. So let's suppose your house is getting constructed and you have told the contractor that up to 40% will be allowed to you. Okay, let's suppose you have told the customer that up to 80 lakhs you can charge, up to 80, but actual cost of the contractor is 40. So will you pay him 80 or 40? Tell me. So will you pay him 80 or 40? 40 only. Yes or no? 40 only. Yeah. So that's how you need to consider this. Okay, great. Any further questions? Clear on this? Everyone clear? Simple, huh? So I'm just hoping things have been simple so far. Okay, so Manvi is asking, can we also discuss the labor cost recovery? Sure. So if you look at the labor cost, no worries. So if you look at the labor cost, for labor, the labor cost, what was the percentage agreed? 30% was agreed. What is the actual percentage? 25%. So 25% increase is there. Is that within the range? Yes. So that is what will be allowed. Okay. Now, what was the initial cost? 1.2 crore was the initial cost estimated. On this 1.2 crore, can you compute 25%? Can you compute 25% on this 1.2 crore quickly and give me the answer? Yes, 30 lakhs. Yeah, so Supriya says 30 lakhs. Correct. So now on this 1.2 crore, if you apply 25%, you get 30 lakhs. So that is what you have considered over there. Okay, so this is what you have considered. Fine. Now clear on this. I understand there was one more query in between. There was one more query I missed out. So in case I by chance miss out, because in the chat it's very difficult to track. You may just let me know again, please. Yeah. Right. So let me just. Okay. So I think Anirudh had a query. Anirudh is saying in the contract, the customer agreed to reimburse the contractor for the increased cost of material and labor only to the extent of 30 and 20%. The rest will be the amount which the contractor will have to bear. That will be going to be his loss, or you can say uh, cut down on his margins. The answer is of course yes. Of course yes. Okay. So we are not saying it's a loss. You can say to that extent his margins will go down. Okay. Yeah. Clear? Any questions so far? Okay. So then Sai is asking, what about actual expenses? Then only we can know net results of the contract. Yes, of course. Okay. So till the time we don't know the actual cost, so we'll not be able to get onto the variations as to what all things will increase or decrease. So that's how it's required to be looked at. Tambeshwari is saying in case this is not completed within 2 years and 10 months, then you'll have to remove that incentive. So can you add the incentive in such a case? Tell me, Tambeshwari. That incentive will not be permitted. Okay, that will not be paid. So that's why you'll have to take out the incentive. Okay, but why did you take the incentive? Because even if you look at the question, you will not know whether the incentive is payable or not. But the question asked you to assume that incentive will be given. Hardik is saying penalty is there. No, penalty is not there if you fail to complete in 2 years, 10 months. Penalty is there if you go beyond 3 years and 2 months. Okay. So I think you need to be very, very clear on this aspect. So let me just show this to you. See, agreed period is what? 3 years. So if you complete in 2 years, 10 months. 2 years, 10 months. So if you complete this within this period, that is where you get incentive. Okay. Then the second window is 3 years, 2 months. Okay. If you go beyond this period, or let me just say, if you go beyond this period, then what will happen? There will be a penalty. Correct? For anything that will fall within this period, there will neither be a penalty nor an incentive as far as the terms are concerned. So how do you get to know about it? It's written in the contract. Okay, so for this period, for this period, for this period, if you look at, for this period, if you look at, there will not be any penalty. There will not be any penalty. At the same time, there will not be any incentive. Now, clear on this? Everyone clear on this? Yeah. Kasak is asking, then sir, if there's a penalty, so let's suppose if there's a penalty, then what do? You will reduce the amount, because by penalty, contractor will not be paid. Okay, so 5 crore to the extent of penalty will go down. So you'll have to subtract the amount. So currently, if you look at the solution, you have added all of these amounts. But for penalty, you will have to reduce the amount of the contract. Yeah, because penalty is the amount by which contractor will not be paid. In fact, will be charged from the contractor. Okay, I can see a lot of questions coming up now. Let me just see. I think Kasak and Hardik, you are clear on this. Okay, great. Malu is asking how to calculate the material cost recovery. I can't understand. Sure, I'll come to that point slightly later. Maybe let's pick it up towards the end of the session now. Supriya is asking, this is we get extra time only to complete the contract, right? Yes. See, there could be various reasons. Generally, if you look at the construction contracts, because they take substantial period of time, so that's why delays, escalations, okay, all of these claims, these are very, very common. I'm just talking about the practical aspect. So you may think about it. Okay, many of you will be able to relate to this. So let's suppose if you see this road getting constructed, a flyover getting constructed, the initial period which is estimated, generally there's a delay. And there are a lot of reasons. Practical challenges are there. So it's not that the contractor will always like to delay. There could be challenges. There are reasons beyond which, beyond his control. That's why he can't control. Similarly, if you look at the construction of the building, so with exact surety, it cannot be said that this is the time frame within which it will be completed. Okay, so there will be a delay. Yeah. So there are reasons to do that. Okay. All right. So now what I'll do is I'll just quickly flip you through the cost components. Okay, as around the contract cost, and then I'll come to your query. Okay, so I understand you may have some more queries around this. Let me just move on to the next aspect, and then I'll come back to your queries. Okay, so we'll talk about the contract costs now. Now, similar to what you see in case of contract revenue, you are also required to similarly analyze costs of the contract. Costs of the contract. So what do you mean by this? See, as far as the revenue is concerned, so what did we discuss? That between the contractor and the customer, what is the agreement? Initial amount is there, then a lot of variation, charges, etc., which the contractor will want to charge from the customer. So that is what we discussed. Now we are looking at the costing of the contract. Means when the contractor will be carrying out the work, or maybe when he'll want to enter into the contract, he will estimate the cost. Yes or no? So the contractor will always estimate the cost, and after the estimation, contractor will also be actually incurring all of these costs. So what are going to be various components of the costs which the contractor can consider, which he can just include in his cost, which will also be considered for recognition. Okay. So now, what are those costs? Costs that relate directly to the specific contract. For example, labor, material, then some equipment may be required for the construction. Okay. So when you see road getting constructed, building getting constructed, there are some machineries, equipments that are used. Yes or no? Now, sometimes you may go and take them on rent. So their rental will be added. Or if you are using that machine, so if let's suppose contractor owns that machine and using that machine, so the depreciation on the machine. Okay. So all of these costs, similarly, the contractor may engage a consultant, a professional, or a technical person for the construction. Yeah. Similarly, a contractor may incur some borrowing cost. Means contractor may have taken a loan in respect of construction of the asset or the building on which interest is required to be paid. Yeah. There could be some assistance in relation to design, in relation to the technical aspects. Okay. Or it is any other cost. It is any other cost which is directly attributable. Directly attributable means which is directly linked to the construction of that asset. So all of those costs should be added to the cost of the contract, except selling cost. Now, what do you mean by selling or marketing cost? See, please try to understand it this way. Let's suppose a building is getting constructed. Okay, let's suppose a building is getting constructed. So this is the building which is under construction. Now, for the construction of this building, various costs will be incurred. People will be deployed, labor will be there, material will be there, consultants could be there, machineries could be there. There are a lot of elements of cost which may arise. Now, marketing or promotion, advertisement of this building is also started. Okay. So let's suppose there's a project which is coming up. So do you see the marketing of that? Do you see a lot of advertisements for new projects coming up? Do you see that or not? Tell me quickly. For various buildings, for various projects which are constructed, do you see there's an advertisement for all of those buildings? Yes or no? Yeah. So let's suppose for this building, marketing is also going on. Okay, so its construction is going on and its marketing is also going on. Now tell me one thing, that can we say that this marketing cost has got anything to do with the construction of the building? Means if you give an advertisement, if you promote that, so will that support in the construction of the building? Has that got anything to do with the construction? Tell me. Tell me. Yes or no? Tell me. Has this marketing got anything to do with the construction? The answer is no. Yeah. Marketing is something which is for the sale, which is for the promotion. So that's why any such cost, you will not include with the cost of the construction. With the cost of the construction, what do you need to do? You need to just simply apply one principle. What principle will that be? That has this cost supported in the construction of that asset or not? If that cost would have supported in the construction of the asset, then you will consider that. If that cost would not have supported, means that is not directly attributable to the construction of the asset, then you will not get into that. Okay. So that means only and only those costs which are there in relation to the construction of the asset, which are there in relation to the construction of the building. Okay. Those you will consider. For example, we discussed material, labor, okay, consultant, borrowing cost. Borrowing cost means interest cost. Similarly, if you look at others, others could be like design, technology. Okay, the examples could be numerous. But if you look at all of these costs, they are only and only in relation to the construction. Okay. Tanya is asking, but sir, in the second point, it is mentioned that the costs which are not directly attributable is also considered. See, let's not go by the technical language which is mentioned. By directly attributable, we just simply means to say that something which is supporting the construction. So that's how you are required to look at it. Something which is supporting the construction. So that is what you need to consider. Clear on this? Clear on this? Yeah, great. All right. So now what we can do is I planned to cover a question on this, but I think we'll get on to that question maybe in the next session. And please remember, we are not yet done. So what we can do is maybe we can just keep some time for the discussions on your doubts now. Okay. Yeah. So what we'll do is we'll not discuss this topic further. Now, happy to have a discussion on your doubts. Yes, over to you. Any questions, any doubts that you may have, we can pick up that now. Yes. All right. So moving on to your questions, doubts, quickly. Yes. Any questions, any doubts that you may have? No questions? Quickly, yeah? No questions so far? Okay, so great. So Tanya has this question. Okay, so Tambeshwari is asking marketing. How can we say it's not related? Tanya, I'll come back to your query. Yeah? Okay, so see, when you look at the marketing, see, marketing is not there for construction. Yes or no? So let's suppose a building is getting constructed. So let's suppose its construction is completed over here, say on 27th of November. Okay, so I'm just drawing this chart. Okay, now marketing cost could be incurred at two stages, up to this stage or after this stage. Now, what is the purpose of marketing or advertisement? Is that cost incurred for the construction of the building? Tell me, what do you think? So let's suppose if a building is getting constructed and if you carry out promotions for that building, let's suppose you want to sell that building. Let's suppose you are the real estate developer. So shall we say that this cost will support in the construction? The answer is no. Why? Because that cost will be incurred for its sale, to carry out its sale. Because by incurring that cost, what will that entity do? Entity will be able to sell that. Okay. Objective of this cost is not for the construction. Objective is this cost is for the sale, for the saleability. Yes? Yes or no? So therefore, marketing is not something which is incurred in relation to the construction. Yeah, and that's why it's been kept out of this purview. So of course, because it's a cost, so that's why it will also be charged, but it will not be forming part of the construction costs for the purposes of consideration of AS7. Okay, clear on this? Tambeshwari, you are clear? Quickly? Yeah, okay, all right. So great. Now, looking at this next query, so Tane is asking, सर एक बार कॉन्ट्रैक्ट रेवेन्यू फिर से शॉर्ट में बता दो. श्योर, लेट्स क्विकली लुक एट द कॉन्ट्रैक्ट रेवेन्यू. Now in terms of the contract revenue, so let's understand there's a contract between two parties. So A Limited is the contractor and then you have a customer, say B Limited. So B Limited is the customer. So initially when they entered into the contract, what did they say? That A will charge 5 crore. A will charge 5 crore. Okay. Now, over and above, what did they agree on? They agreed on that tomorrow, if let's suppose cost of A will go up. So B says, don't worry, if your cost will go up for genuine reasons, I'll compensate you. Then B is also trying to incentivize A. So B is saying that, okay, if you complete the work before time, I'll pay you more. At the same time, B wants to pose an penalty. So B says, if you'll delay this significantly, I'll charge a penalty. Okay. Now, if we look at some of these components, whether you talk about variation, whether you talk about incentive, whether you talk about penalty, okay, or any sort of escalation. Now, can we say that all of these are principally agreed? Yes, they are principally agreed. If you look at the contract, they are clearly specified in the contract. Okay. So as far as their agreement is concerned, principally both the parties are aligned on that. But is their amount known? Can we say at the beginning that the amount of variation is known, incentive is known, penalty is known, and escalation is known, and which both the parties have agreed? The answer is no. Why? Because if you look at all of these components, only and only when they will arise, both the parties will get into a discussion and they will mutually agree. Why? Because there will be some sort of discussion in relation to these components, always. But can the parties go and enter into the discussion on this initial amount? The answer is no. Why? Because this is initially agreed. This is sort of done. Yes or no? Yeah. So that is what you say are the various components of contract revenue. Now, in this case, when it comes to the initial amount, this portion. So this portion is something over which you are free to recognize revenue. Means there's no question mark. But for all of these components, okay, we are not sure as a contractor whether the customer will agree or not. Okay, so that agreement is missing. So that's why the standard says that till time this sort of approval is not there from the customer, till the time this is not agreed between both the parties in terms of the amount involved, you should wait for the revenue recognition. Okay, clear on this now? Yeah. So Tanya, clear? Great. Any more questions? Then I think Kasak has a question. Kasak is asking, increase in amount due to escalation is estimated beforehand at the time of the contract, and whatever the actual cost is incurred, they have to be compensated up to the percentage decided. No, Kasak, please understand. When the contract will be initially agreed between the two parties, only a percentage can be agreed upon as far as the escalation is concerned. Generally, because whether this percentage increase or the amount of increase, sorry, if you look at the amount of increase, it will not be practically possible for them to agree on. Of course, they can always put a range. So let's suppose if the 5 crore contract is there, maybe a range is put up that up to 1 crore is the amount of escalation you can get. Okay, but technically, generally, in terms of percentages, that is required to be looked at. Okay, so that's how it works. Okay, amount is generally then computed as to what is the actual amount uh, which has been additionally incurred by the contractor. Why? Because on that, then the discussion may go on. What were the reasons? Who was at fault? Okay, as to why that additional cost has been incurred, because customer will not agree immediately. Okay, customer will always want to look at the factors. Huh? Maybe the contractor is correct in his approach. Okay, maybe the contractor is correct in his approach, in which case it's okay. Yeah. All right, any more questions? Okay, Hardik is asking, can the contractor do the costing keeping in mind the escalation? See, generally contractor will do that, generally, and that's how the margins are kept by the contractor. So contractor will generally want to include that portion, but beyond a point of time, like I gave you an example of 2020. For example, like currently pollution is going on. So let's suppose pollution has increased significantly. Okay. And let's suppose during this period, the construction gets stopped and there's a delay. Okay. Of course, this is going to be a short time frame within which costs are not going to shoot up. But let's suppose year on year, this keeps happening and this results in a delay, maybe by an year or 2 years, because in case of long-term contracts, this delay could have an impact on the costing. So that's where the contractor may suffer. Or let's suppose if the margins are too low on the contract. So the contractor may think that, I'm not left with any margin or I may be running into losses. So that's where it works. Okay. Kasak is asking if the fault is not under both the parties, then see, There could be various reasons. I am think you're just trying to bring in this checklist. See, it doesn't matter that is because of any fault or beyond the control of both the parties. For us, what is important is to look at the question. If the question permits the escalation to be covered, then we'll go by the range. And within that range, whatever escalation is permitted, we'll consider that and apply that. Okay, so that's how you're required to look at. But practically, I'm just telling you as to how the things will work. Practically, both the parties will sit together, they will discuss, understand, and that's how they will agree on. Okay. Harshdeep is asking the second point of the cost contract. So I would like to keep it very, very simple. And let's not go by first point, second point, or third point. You just go by the understanding that any cost which is incurred and which is incurred in relation to the construction of the building or the construction of the asset, whatever is that underlying asset, you need to understand that whether that cost is incurred in relation to that construction or not. If the answer is yes, you'll take it to the construction cost. Otherwise, not. So that's how you're required to consider it. Okay. Keep it very, very simple. Huh? And that's how you should approach the questions also. Okay. We'll discuss in the next session when we'll pick up some examples around. Okay. Then Hardik is asking, so sir, in contract, cost escalation can be there. Yes, of course. So the cost escalation which is going to arise, this will also form part of contract cost. Correct. Absolutely correct. Okay. Okay, great. So Hardik, Kasak are clear. Any more questions? Any more doubts if you have? More questions? No? So I think then we can close our discussion. Okay. So thanks everyone for your time. We can just close our discussion and for the wonderful participation you have shown. But my request is that before we meet next, make sure you revise everything we have covered today, huh? Because we are going to continue on this topic. And if you don't revise, so you may lose out. Huh? So it's very, very important you revise and then we meet. Huh? Sure. All right. Thanks. Manish, I think we can just close. Yeah. Okay.